Who is your pick for NFL MVP?
Yeah, I think it's obvious at this point now with the Jalen Hurts injury. I'm gonna go Patrick Mahomes. I was hoping that Joe Burrow got into this conversation a little bit, and I think you even brought it up. You were texting about it. We were considering placing a wager on him to win the MVP. I think when they beat the Chiefs or right before they beat the Chiefs. He almost joined into that conversation. I'd say he's about third right now, but it's Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, he's dominated. The last couple of weeks haven't been his best, but still against what was it, Denver and then Houston last week wasn't great, but still got the job done, pulled out the victory. I would go Mahomes. I think it's clear and obvious at this point. Jalen Hurts was making it very interesting. What he was able to do with his legs really added to his ability, and he's really improved as a thrower. Dan Orlovsky was talking about it a couple of week ago that he thinks he's the most improved thrower of the football he's ever seen. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I mean his the way he's improved this season is unbelievable. But it's still Patrick Mahomes who's the best player in football.
Yeah, if the season had ended today, I honestly would be torn between Hurts and Mahomes. But like Merlo said, I think since Hurts is down now, it's pretty much Mahomes' award to lose. A couple of guys I would throw out there just as an honorable mention, and maybe a couple names to keep an eye on as the season comes to an end. These last couple games, Tua having a really nice season. Up there, I think he's leading the league in passer rating. Um, Obviously Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, like Merle mentioned, but one guy that I think when you talk about most valuable player that comes into play, the guy who's helped his team the most this year, it's Justin Herbert. I mean, the Chargers are in a playoff spot right now, and if anyone else that wasn't of the talent of Justin Herbert was a quarterback of this team, they would not be anywhere near a playoff spot. I mean, that team is just dismantled by injuries. I think Brandon Staley's a decent coach, but he's nothing special. That defense, the offense, like I said, both injuries on both sides. Justin Herbert's done a fantastic job.
May I just add quickly, if they do win a couple more games here, I mean, get them. I mean, it feels like they're almost a lock to make the playoffs after beating the Dolphins and now beating the Titans. Now they're 8-6. If Herbert and the Chargers win a couple more games and he starts really playing well, especially with getting his receivers back, he may very well throw himself into this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to bring up too. I think that Herbert has definitely overcome probably the most out of any of the quarterbacks that are in the playoff picture right now. I do agree with both of you that I do think that Mahomes is the MVP. I actually had just made a video arguing for him, and that was before Hurts got hurt. I think that the way that we discuss MVP sometimes, the way that at least I hear a lot of analysts, whether it be on ESPN or CBS Sports, whatever, talk about the MVP conversation is so interesting to me. Today I was listening to somebody on TikTok talk about the MVP, and they were saying if the Eagles lose this Sunday or this Saturday, I believe they're playing, right? If they lose to Dallas this weekend, does that help Hurts' case? But then if the opposite happens and the Eagles win with Gardner Minshew, does that hurt Hurts' case? And I think that when we get into arguments like that, where we're taking singular games and what happens in those to argue against or for a player and what they've done the whole season, I think that that's really dumb. It's like, Dak Prescott when he went down and Cooper Rush was winning those games for the Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys defense was playing out of its mind. I don't think it showed that Cooper Rush had value as a starting quarterback in the NFL. The fact that that was even a conversation at any point was ridiculous to me. I think it just showed that Dallas is a really well-rounded team and that they were still capable of winning with their defense the way that was playing and with a quarterback that was playing fine. So I think a lot of times when we talk about the MVP, I really dislike some of the narratives that are thrown out there. And really in football and in any sport, it's such a narrative-driven award when now, especially with all the stats we have available to us now, we're really able to measure value. And to me, that's why I have Mahomes as the MVP. All of the statistics that measure value have him as the most valuable player in the league. And then also, I mean, if you just watch the guy on a weekly basis, I mean, you could just see he's the best quarterback in football, and he's really ran away with that title this year. So I agree. I think Mahomes is the best quarterback and the MVP.
Hurts, like you said, is having a great season. He's got an excellent team, excellent roster around him. It wouldn't shock me if Gardner Minshew goes into Dallas this week and puts up a fight. I don't agree with it though. Like almost like you're mentioning, should that be a knock against Jalen Hurts that this roster is great, but Jalen Hurts is doing so much more than Gardner Minshew is going to be able to do. The talent level is a very far gap. So you're right. I mean, Hurts is having a great year. I don't think he's the MVP, but if Gardner Minshew goes and beats Dallas, that's exactly what's going to happen. People are going to say, "Oh, it's the system, it's his team," and that's not the case. Hurts is an excellent player. They just have a great system and overall roster that they can throw a decent backup, a good backup quarterback into the situation, and maybe he can give them a chance to win a game.
Well, I think that it's not a knock. Of course, it's the system. Of course, it's the team, because how else do guys thrive in this league? You need the talent, but talent can only get you so far. You need the right pieces around you. I mean, I think a good situation to compare this to is Patrick Mahomes. Look at what he took over, right? He took over a division-winning team, the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that had Alex Smith the year before, who had success in Kansas City. But Mahomes takes over and he elevates that team to the next step with already the greatest tight end of all time, in my opinion, Travis Kelce on that team. Tyreek Hill was on that team. And he's got one of the greatest head coaches we've seen in the last couple of decades in Andy Reid. So I don't think it's necessarily a knock to say, oh, it's the system, it's the guys around him. Of course it is. You need talent around you. And that's the only way these guys are going to get to these MVP levels. I mentioned Herbert. Herbert would be a strong MVP candidate if he had Keenan Allen all year, if he had Mike Williams all year, if he had Rashawn Slater, if he had a healthy defense. Like it's not all on a single player, and of course, in a good system, the players are going to thrive.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a really good point there. I mean, you talk about the system and the scheme and the weapons and whatever, the coaching. All of that definitely goes into whether or not a team is a winning football team or not. And the reason why the MVP is typically a quarterback is because quarterback is still the most valuable position on the field, and it does contribute the most to winning, but it's not the sole reason why you're going to win. Like, I find it interesting, these narratives that are created around these quarterbacks. Like, all the people that still knock Tua, and I remember the three of us ripping into Tua before the season started. None of us were really big Tua fans.
No.
But I mean, I think he's completely proven us wrong this year. And yes, adding a Tyreek Hill and adding a left tackle and adding a much better head coach this season definitely helps him a lot. But it's allowed him to kind of go and elevate his game to the level it's been at. I mean, when Josh Allen, when they brought Stephon Diggs in, people weren't knocking him and saying that, oh, it's just because of Stephon Diggs, it's because of the system, whatever. I mean, you need those complementary pieces around you. It's the same thing with Jalen Hurts. You bring AJ Brown in this year. Having that number one receiver especially is a huge piece to a quarterback's development. Having that come in is a really huge help. But I don't think that I find it interesting that we pick and choose, or the media pick and chooses certain guys, and they run with narratives like Tyreek. They say Tyreek Hill is just carrying Tua. I don't think that that's the case at all. I mean, Tyreek Hill was on pace to have his best season of his career, and that includes him playing with the best quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes. So
Yeah.
I don't think that, I think that it's just a great, you add all these pieces together, you bring out the best in a player. I think that you're seeing the best out of Tua right now. You're seeing the best out of Jalen Hurts. And I find it ridiculous that, people still want to knock these guys and say it's the system, it's the weapons, it's this, it's that. It can't all be on one player. They need that help to thrive. And it's just like JM said with Justin Herbert. I mean, we've seen the ridiculous amount of talent that this guy has, and the fact that they are 8-6 with all the injuries they've had. He's never had a good defense in his career. They have a ridiculous amount of injuries. I think the coaching staff is poor, and yet they're still at the position that they're at. Yes, a quarterback can help you overcome all that, but we might be seeing Justin Herbert, if all those things didn't exist. The coaching staff was great. The weapons were great. He might be the leader for MVP this year because all those things would be working for him this year. So I think it's ridiculous, some of these narratives that people make with these quarterbacks.
Yeah, with Herbert, not to mention he plays half his games at a neutral site, basically. But the thing about Tyreek Hill, it's incredible. You talk about narratives. It's amazing the way these narratives flip. Like when Tyreek Hill was in Kansas City, it was, oh, he's just a speed demon. Mahomes made him what he was, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then Now he goes over to Miami, and now he's carrying Tua apparently. The last thing I want to say about MVP and comparing it throughout sports, I think in quarterback, in football, obviously most of the time it's a quarterback. We haven't seen one since Adrian Peterson that wasn't a quarterback. That's where I think the narratives could be most used, just because baseball, for example, you don't really fake stats in baseball. You go out, you produce, you accumulate numbers, and that's just the way it goes. In football, there are so many stats, especially I know you on your channel could go on and on about it. The way standard statistics are just should be extinct because they're basically, prehistoric at this point. Joe Flacco was throwing 300 yards for the Jets for the first couple of games of the year, and it was some of the worst quarterback play I had seen in years because he was throwing the ball 50 yards a game, and he was just dumping it down, and he got a couple lucky breaks and whatever. So I think you really need to look into the season in depth, look at the advanced numbers, look at the way that the situation the quarterback's been in. What moments has he come up big in this year? You take all that into account. I think that's how you end up with your MVP, not based on who leads the league in passing yards or something like that.